because Rosh Chodesh means the start of the month. So why in the world would there be 2 days of Rosh Chodesh? And let's see how that's going to affect things in general. Let's just start. Well, our lunar year, we mentioned last year, is 354 days. Okay? Each lunar month is approximately 29 and a half days. Okay? So 29 and a half times 30 gives us our 354. What is it? I'm sorry. What is it actually? So that's fascinating. Let's look on the first page of the sources. Tana Rabbanan. Right? We have it both in Hebrew and in English. Those who want to follow, each should follow as they feel comfortable. Pamachat, one time, nitkashu shamayim ba'avim. The heavens got all knotted up with clouds. V'nirit dmut levana. And there appeared to be the appearance of the moon be'esrim v'tisha lachodesh, on the 29th day of the month. Now we know our Rosh Chodesh is either on the 30th day, in which case the previous month had 29 days, or our Rosh Chodesh is on the 31st day, in which case the previous month had 30 days. If Rosh Chodesh were to be on the 29th day, that means the previous month only had 28 days. That is astronomically challenging. Kasvur ma'am lomar Rosh Chodesh. The people thought today's Rosh Chodesh. Right? So the 29th day of the month is actually the first day of the next month, and the previous month only had 28 days. Gamliel said to them, Kach mukublani mi beis abi abba. I have the following tradition from the house of my father's father. Ein chidusha shel levana. The moon is never less than esrim v'tisha yom, 29 days, umechza, and half a day, ushnei shlishei sha'a, 2/3 of an hour, v'ayin gimel chalakim, and 73 chalakim. A chelek is that an hour is divided up into 1,080 parts. Chalakim. A chelek means a part of something. Each one is about 3.3 seconds. So this is the tradition that I have from my grandfather. Now, Rabbi Gamliel lived, well, he was the leader after the Churban. It's after the year 70 CE. He's talking about from his grandfather, so we're talking about a tradition that was passed down. That this is the length of the lunar year, the lunar month, excuse me. So I did a little math for us down below on the bottom half of this page. A half day, of course, is 12 hours, which is 43,200 seconds. 2/3 of an hour, of course, is 40 minutes, which is 2,400 seconds. 73 chalakim is 73 over 1080 minutes or seconds. It comes out to 243 seconds. Therefore, it's 29 days and 45,843 seconds. 1 day, 24 hours, is 86,400 seconds. So Rabbi Gamliel's calculation is 45,843 over 86,400. Is it clear? That's how many seconds you have in 12 hours, 2/3 of an hour, half a day, 2/3 of an hour, and 73 chalakim. That comes out to 0.53059, which means that the lunar month is 29 days, 29.53059. In the 1970s, NASA, using, I think it was Hubble, or I'm not sure exactly which telescope that they used, they decided they were going to find the duration of the lunar month down to the fraction of a second, and they came out with 29.53058. 88, when you round it off, becomes 9. When NASA was told that the Jews have had this number for well over 1,000 years, their response was, lucky guess. Okay? Now, if I was such a lucky guesser, then I'd be putting down a lot of money in the stock market and doing quite well, right? It's not a lucky guess down to 0.53059. It's not a lucky guess, but there are two ways that we can discern what happens in this world. Either we can use our abilities, and as technology advances, our ever-advancing abilities of observation to discern what is happening, or, right, if I wrote a program, you could try to figure it out, or I can tell you what I did in the program. And basically, the Torah Shebaal Peh is that information that was passed down to us. So this is found in the Gemara, this is found in the Rambam, this is found in the Shulchan Aruch. This was found well before, BN, before NASA, right? We certainly had all of this information. Now, how was it determined in the time of the Gemara? How was all of this determined? So come to the second page now, the back side of that front page. And this is the Gemara, a Mishnah again in Rosh Hashanah. This is Chaf Bet Amud Bet. I have the Hebrew and the English. The English is going to kick in a few lines in. So if you're following in the English, you'll kick in a few moments. But we'll start with the Mishnah at the top. What happened is as follows. Witnesses who would actually see the new moon, they would come and report to the Beit Din HaGadol, to the great court that was in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. And once they ascertained the veracity of these witnesses, as we saw Gamliel and others would say, hey, let's see if this guy really knows what he's talking about. Let's see if this can be true. Once they would ascertain the veracity, they would then be Mekadesh the Chodesh. Now they needed to let people know when Rosh Chodesh was. So what would they do? Barishona, originally, the top line after the Mishnah there, Hayumasian Masuot. They would light these different torches. And we'll soon see how that was done. And they would light torches, and these torches would pass the message from mountaintop to mountaintop until everyone would know. We have a number more. Until everyone would know. However, Mishakilkalu HaKutim, once the Kutim were those who accepted the Torah Shebichtav. They accepted the written Torah, they did not accept the oral Torah. And they had their own quirks of their calendars that they would try to get our calendar to be aligned with the way they thought it should be without involving the words of the oral law. So they always wanted, for example, Shavuot to come out on a Sunday. So therefore, they were up to sending false witnesses to announce when they saw the moon in order to set it up that the holiday of Shavuot would in fact come out on a Sunday. So it was established that we can't just light these fires because they were lighting the fires on the wrong nights and sending everything awry. And therefore they established Yushluchin Yotzin, that messengers should go out, and you have to send out people who were known to be trusted, and people who were known also to the place they were going, that they would know that they can trust these people. How would they do it? They bring these long poles of cedar, aruchin, v'kanim, v'atzi shemen, and orish al-pishtan. And then they would have these reeds and this very flammable olive oil wood and different flax, and they would tie it all on top. V'ola rosh har. They go to the top of a mountain, and they would light it up. Umolech umevi umale umorid, and they would bring it out and in and up and down. Until he see that his friends on the next mountaintop got the message. And how does he know they got the message? Because he sees that they too have lit their poles. And those in the third mountain, those in the second mountain, when they saw the third mountain got the message and lit their poles, they were good to go. Which mountains would they use? From Har HaMishcha to Sartava, from Sartava to Grufina, from Grufina to Chavran. from Charvan the Beit Palatin. When Beit Palatin, that was already on the verge of Bavel, of Babylonia. Lo zazu misham, they would not leave there. Elamolech umevi umalamor, they'd be waving those poles that were afire. Ad shayaroa kol hagola lefanav kimidurat ha'esh. What happened then is in Bavel, everyone would go onto their rooftop and start to wave a torch. So it looked like the entire Gola was Midurat Ha'esh, was this tremendous fire.
Do we know where these mountains
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Question.
Yes,
How far apart are these mountains? I'm wondering how far apart that you can do this.
Probably as far as you could, that would be visible.
Yeah.
Right? So that way you're minimizing how many you need to do, but you're being effective. Now, when would they go up and start waving? And once we understand this, we'll have understood the first part, which is why do we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh? So let's keep in mind again. A month has 28 days. A month then has a 29th day. If the witnesses came on day 29, then that day is Rosh Chodesh. I'm sorry, if the witnesses come, 29 days. If the witnesses come on day 30, that means day 30 is Rosh Chodesh, is the first of the month. The previous month had 29 days, and this month has 1 day. If the witnesses don't come on day 30, then automatically, de facto, Rosh Chodesh comes out on day 31. We don't say, hey, it's been cloudy, this is a 45-day month, right? If it didn't come on day 30, then automatically, de facto, day 31 is Rosh Chodesh, and the previous month, therefore, had 30 days. Okay. So now, the witnesses came, let's say the witnesses came on day 30. So either there are two possibilities. Either they will do their waving on the night of the 30th, and that way people will know that the previous day, right? The witnesses have to come during the day. You're waving the fires during the day, no one's going to see it. So you have to wait till night. So you're either going to wave it at night, and people will know that that day was Rosh Chodesh, right? And tomorrow is day 2 of the month, or the other option is to wave it when? On the second night, right? Right? So we either wave it day 30 at night and we know it's Rosh Chodesh, or we don't wave it day 30 night and they know tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, right? Or we wave it day 31 at night if that was Rosh Chodesh. If we don't, then we know 2 days back was Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara says, let's pick up in the Gemara now. Okay, first the Gemara explains Mashma, my Mashma, the Masin, listen to Yekodu, Dichtivi, Yasim, David, Nashav, and Tagmi, Vaktina, David. Okay, it means burning. Fair enough. Tana Rabban. Ein Masin Masut Ela HaChodesh Shenire Bismano. The arrangement was as follows. If the month was seen in its time, that's on day 30, then what would they do? They would then do the fires, wave the fires that night. And the people in the Gola would know that day 30 was Rosh Chodesh, and tomorrow is a regular day. If they don't see the fire, then they understand ex post facto that previous day actually was not Rosh Chodesh. It was day 30 of the previous month, and tomorrow, day 31, is actually the first day of the month.
What do they do when it rains?
Well, this, interesting, but this one, it seems, was very flammable. Right? This was stuff that's going to burn. The Eimatai Masin, right, when you have these forest fires, right, the rain doesn't help much. The Eimatai Masin, and when would they do it? L'or Iburo. They would do it that night after the day of the 30th. L'meimra, to show us, Da'achaser avdinan amale lo avdinan. So if it was a 29-day month, they would waive the fire. It was a 30-day month, they would not. The Gemara asks, and that's the next stuff, I don't have it for you, I'm sorry. The Gemara asks, well, why don't they do it on the night, not the night of the 30th, the night of the 31st. And that way you'll know either that day was Rosh Chodesh or the previous day is Rosh Chodesh.
But the day is already gone.
So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara answers as follows. You don't want to make it always 2 days. Here's where our 2 days of Rosh Chodesh comes in. Let's imagine we're out there in Bavel. Day 27, regular day. Day 28, regular day. Day 29, regular day. Day 30,
Could be other day.
it might be Rosh Chodesh. It might not be Rosh Chodesh. There were those who were accustomed to not doing malacha, not doing work on Rosh Chodesh. So what would happen on day 30? We don't really do much work on day 30. Why not? Because tonight of day 30, we might see the fires. In which case, we see today was Rosh Chodesh. If we see the fires, then we were correct. Today was Rosh Chodesh. Tomorrow we go back to work. If we don't see the fires at night, then what is that? Then what do we understand? Today was not Rosh Chodesh. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, day 30 was always treated as Rosh Chodesh. Because you wouldn't know until the night of the 30th if that was or was not Rosh Chodesh. But going into day 30, it always was treated as Rosh Chodesh. If it in fact was Rosh Chodesh, then it's not day 30. It's actually day 1. Okay? And tomorrow's day 2, regular. If it's not Rosh Chodesh, then that remains day 30. And tomorrow will be day 1. So what do we have to do? We'll have to treat a second day as Rosh Chodesh. That is why we always, when we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, that's when the previous month had 30 days. Then our 2 days of Rosh Chodesh are day 30 and day 1. The time we have 1 day Rosh Chodesh when the previous month had 29 days. Now the next month is day 1. So day 30 is always Rosh Chodesh. Day 1 is always Rosh Chodesh. We only have day 30, we'll soon see, usually 6 times a year. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less. But normally we have a 30-day month 6 times a year. That's with 630s, 629. That's our 354 days of the lunar year. Okay? But they didn't know until afterwards if it was Rosh Chodesh or not. If it wasn't, so that was already treated Rosh Chodesh, tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh. Now, with this, before we get to another interesting point, with this we understand why in Israel they have 1 day of Pesach in the beginning, 1 day of Pesach at the end, 1 day of Sukkot, 1 day of Shmini Atzeret. They have 1 day of Shavuot. We have 2 days Sukkot beginning, 2 days end, 2 days Pesach, 2 days end, 2 days Shavuot. Yet when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, even in Israel, they have 2 days. Why is that?
Because that's on 1 Tishrei. And you
Oh,
don't know
because our holidays are on the 15th of the month. Right? And the 15th of the month, the people in Israel knew when Rosh Chodesh was. But we, once they're starting to send the shluchim, as the Mishnah said, they're sending messengers, they're no longer waving. So we don't know real time or that night. It could take up to 2 weeks for us to find out. So we might not even know. By the time Pesach rolls around, we don't know which day was Rosh Chodesh. The messages haven't come yet. So we need to keep 2 days. In Israel, they know on that day. So that's for all other holidays. But Rosh Hashanah is on that day. So they had to treat that day as Rosh Hashanah. Maybe the witnesses would come that day. If they do, it's 1 day. If they don't, then it's 2 days. So even in Israel, since that's the one holiday, like Janet said, which falls out on the Rosh Chodesh, so even real time in Israel, at night, when they don't know if it's yet. Because the witnesses are first going to come the next day. But you have to treat it as you have to treat it as Rosh Hashanah, because maybe the witnesses will come.
So 6 times the 30th day actually ends up being the first day. So there is no 30th day.
Correct. Well, take a look now on the last page that we have over there. How many days per each Hebrew month? Okay? So we've got ourselves 5 months that are definite 30. They're going in order. Tishrei on the left. Next month is Cheshvan. Tishrei is always 30. Cheshvan is a bit of a toss-up. Kislev is a bit of a toss-up. But now we go in order. Tevet is always 29. Shvat always 30. Adar is 29. This year we have 2 Adars. So the Adar, the real Adar is the second Adar, that's 29. The first Adar has 30. Nisan has 30. ER 29. Sivan has 30, Tammuz 29, Av has 30, Elul has 29. Now, as we mentioned last week when it comes to the Adars, so we mentioned that you could have a very strange situation of a person being born 2 weeks after his friend and having his bar mitzvah 2 weeks before his friend. How would that happen? It would happen that one of them was born, let's say, on the 15th day of Adar 1. His friend was born 2 weeks plus later on the first day of Adar 2. So he was born a full 2 weeks plus after his friend. On the year of their bar mitzvah, there's only one Adar. So now the first one who was born 15th of Adar 1, when there's only one Adar, his bar mitzvah is the 15th of Adar. The guy who was born 2 weeks plus after, on the first day of Adar Bet, his birthday is the first day of Adar. There's only one Adar. So his bar mitzvah is the first of Adar. So we discussed last week how he was born 2 weeks plus after his friend. His bar mitzvah will be 2 weeks before his friend.
I have a question.
Yes.
So we have 5 months with definitely 29 days, 5 with definitely 30, and 2 toss-ups.
Right.
How do we average 29.53?
Okay. So first of all, the reason why we're adding in extra months is because we need to keep up with the solar seasons, which is 365 and change.
Right.
Right? So it's not exact. So being that it's not exactly 29.5, that's why we need the swing months of Kislev and Cheshvan. That sometimes they could be 30, 29. Some they could both be 30s. Some they could both be 29s.
Okay.
That's what you made an excellent
right.
point, and that's what gives us our give.
A wiggle.
That's what gives us the wiggle room that we need. Yes.
How do they determine how many days Kislev
And Cheshvan are,
Yeah.
that is a very complicated, well, we don't determine, we've got a set calendar all set. Right? The Mishnah Brura, the Chavetz Chaim, when in his commentary on the Shulchan Aruch says, here's not the place to go in depth about this.
Okay.
So I will echo his sentiment. Okay? Now,
Word of this mystery.
this year, for example, right, look at the last page. This year, for example, Cheshvan had 30 days. On the last page, right, you go from Cheshvan, follow that arrow, you see this past November 2013, so November 2nd was the 29th day of Cheshvan. November 3rd could have either been the first day of Kislev, or instead this year, because the Cheshvan could be a 29-day month, or it could be a 30-day month.
Right.
This year it was a 30-day month, and therefore Kislev only began right on that Monday. Right? So that's why Hanukkah will either go 2 or 3 days into Kislev, depending, do we have 5 or 6 days, 29 or 30 days, right, in the month of Cheshvan, and therefore 5 or 6 days of Hanukkah in the month of Cheshvan.
In these cases,
Now-
was it all pre-calculated, or did someone actually go out?
In which days?
In these cases, like you're giving us the exemplar here of.
It depends on the time.
Or was it, did someone in his Eretz Israel actually go out and look? And
So when we had the Beit HaMikdash standing, then all the months were based on the testimony, the witnesses. Yes.
I meant, but nowadays, it's.
Nowadays we've got a
pre-calculated?
set calendar all set.
Pre-calculated.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So this 30th, and this part I got from Or Sameach on ohr.edu from, I forget the name of the Rav there, but he's got a bunch of wonderful halachic issues that he brings up. This is what I got, this part I got from his. Okay. Now, this year, like I said, there were 30 days to Cheshvan, right? So that's on Sunday, November 3rd was the 30th of Cheshvan, and Monday, November 4th, was the first of Kislev. This leads us to some other interesting bar mitzvah situations, and this is how you can have a person becoming bar mitzvah even before his birthday. Let's understand how it usually works. A person was born on the 5th day of Iyar, let's say. Okay, so when is he, 13 years from then, when does he complete 13 full years? On the 4th. Once the 4th day of Iyar has passed, now he is starting, he has completed 13 years, he's now starting his 14th year. Now we don't say, hey, he was born on the 5th of Iyar, but he was born 3 in the afternoon. Therefore, we don't say that his bar mitzvah is not until we reach the 5th of Iyar at 3 in the afternoon. We say that is day 1. Right? The day he was born is day 1. So once, on the 5th day of the month of Iyar, so 13 years later, once we close out the 4th day of Iyar, now he is bar mitzvah on the 5th day of Iyar. Now, let's say a child who was born on November 3rd this year. November 3rd this year, what is his birthday? The 30th of Cheshvan. Right? Now, let's say now, on his bar mitzvah year, I didn't check this out, but the year 2026, for argument's sake, let's say the year 2026. Now, once, if he was born the 30th of Cheshvan, right? So now, when is he going to be bar mitzvah? 13 years
Cheshvan.
later, once which day passes?
29 Cheshvan.
Once the 29th day of Cheshvan has passed, now he is bar mitzvah. Because he was born on the 30th of Cheshvan. So now the day before, once 13 years later, that day is fully passed, he's good to go. He's bar mitzvah. Let's say that the year 2026, there's only 29 days of Cheshvan. So even though he was born on the 30th of Cheshvan, when will his bar mitzvah be?
The first of Kislev.
On the 1st of Kislev. That's pretty simple. Because he was born the day after the 29th of Cheshvan. His bar mitzvah will be the day after the 29th of Cheshvan. On the year he was born, the day after the 29th of Cheshvan is the 30th of Cheshvan. On his bar mitzvah year, the day after the 20th of Cheshvan is the 1st of Kislev. So even though his bar mitzvah, his birthday was in Cheshvan, his bar mitzvah will be in Kislev. That's more simple. Let's go, right? Because at that point, he has completed, once the previous day, the 29th of Cheshvan, is finished, he's now bar mitzvah. Well, no matter what date we call the next day, 30th of Cheshvan, 1st of Kislev, it's the same.
What about if you were born on the 1st of Tishri? I mean, what if your bar mitzvah is supposed to be the 1st of Tishri, but nobody has a bar mitzvah on the 1st of Tishri? That's Rosh Hashanah.
Okay, so let's realize something. A person becomes bar mitzvah not when there's a celebration, not when he reads from the Torah, not when he gets an aliyah, not when we have a kugel, but when a person is of age, the person becomes bar mitzvah. So if he was born on Rosh Hashanah, then Rosh Hashanah will be his bar mitzvah. Will he read from the Torah? Every shul is what they want to do. But bar mitzvah happens, when someone says, I was never bar mitzvahed. What they really mean is, I never had a ceremony. I never marked the occasion. And therefore a person might decide they want to mark it at a later point in their life, which is a beautiful thing to do. But you are bar mitzvahed once, or bat mitzvahed once a boy turns 13, a girl turns 12, they are bar bat mitzvahed. Let's go the other way. Let's go the flip side. Meaning, sorry, we'll come to your side soon. Okay?
Rabbi, if someone's born at night, then would it, say they were born Rosh Hashanah night, so that was one Tishrei, but it's no longer, because night begins 2 Tishrei, right? So it would be the second day of Rosh Hashanah.
When we look at the birthday, we want to know which Hebrew day were they born.
Right.
So night is the next day. Whether
So
it's Rosh
then
Hashanah, whether it's Yom Kippur, whether it's whatever day it is, night, if you're born after Shkia, after sunset, then your birthday is the next day.
In that case, it would be 2 Tishrei.
Whatever the case is. Person born 1 Tishrei at night, he was not born 1 Tishrei, he was born 2 Tishrei. Okay. Now, it gets interesting when it goes the other way. Let's say a person was born on the 1st of Kislev, when Cheshvan only had 29 days. Okay? So his birthday is the first day of Kislev. What was the day before his birthday? The 29th of Cheshvan. So when will his bar mitzvah be? 13 years later, after the 29th of Cheshvan. Now let's say on the year, so again, he was born the 1st of Kislev. The previous day was the 29th of Cheshvan. So his bar mitzvah will be 13 years later when the 29th day of Cheshvan has passed. Now, on the year of his bar mitzvah, there's a 30th day of Cheshvan. Right? But his bar mitzvah takes place 13 years later when the 29th day of Cheshvan has passed. The 29th day of Cheshvan has passed. What is it today? It's now the 30th of Cheshvan. That is his bar mitzvah. Even though his birthday is on the 1st of Kislev, his bar mitzvah doesn't go by the day he was born. His bar mitzvah is based upon the completion of the date prior to his birth. So, of the 1st of Kislev, on a 29th day prior month, so the date prior to his birth was the 29th of Cheshvan. So now, this year, when there's 30 days, once he finishes the 29th day of Cheshvan, 13 years hence, now is his bar mitzvah. So you have a situation that his bar mitzvah is on the 30th of Cheshvan, even though his birthday was on the 1st day of Kislev. So that is a situation that, based on all that we've been learning today, we come out that a person can have his bar mitzvah the day before his birthday. So Basil brought up, how about Yortzeit? How would Yortzeit, meaning, how do we deal with Yortzeit when we have our 29 or 30 day, right? So if the Yortzeit is on the 1st of Kislev, well, let's realize something first of all. Bar mitzvah is based upon the completion of the previous day, 13 years hence. Yortzeit does not link to the previous day. Yortzeit is, this is the day of the passing. So therefore, it was on the 1st of Kislev, that's the Yortzeit. I don't care if Cheshvan had 29 days or 30 days. It's on the 1st of Kislev. It was on the 29th of Cheshvan. I don't care if tomorrow will be the 30th of Cheshvan or the 1st of Kislev. It's on the 29th. The question that comes up is, let's say it was on the 30th of Cheshvan. So now, that's his yard site. And now, the next year, there is no yard site. There is no 30th of Cheshvan. So then the person will be knowing his yard site on the next day, on the 1st of Kislev. In a situation where there is no such date that year, it'll be pushed off until the next
Doesn't
day.
have to wait a whole year.
Doesn't have to wait a whole year. Yes, Basil and
Another
Linda.
question as far as your side is concerned. Now you have the two Adars.
So that was last week.
Okay.
So
you can
the
find-
custom of the Svardim is that they will commemorate the yard site in the second, right? In the second Adar. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. And we can understand that because the Adar, when we celebrate Purim, is the second Adar. So that seems to be the real Adar.
So the question I'm saying, you could have somebody who died in the first Adar, and then you can have somebody who died in the second Adar, and the second Adar Yortzeit could become that in the same family.
They could merge.
It could merge, or it could be before.
Right, right, correct. Just like the Bar Mitzvah,
Right.
that you end up having the latter event celebrated prior
Right.
to.
Because
Right.
I have that with my mother and my wife's brother. My wife's brother died first, then my mother. This year, the Yortzeit
The yard sites are switched.
I switched.
Interesting.
And I thought
Yeah.
it was just... I thought
Right,
you
and
had
that's
a
like the
problem.
Bar Mitzvah
I
set.
thought
That's
you
like
had
the
a
Bar
problem
Mitzvah.
later.
That's like the Bar Mitzvah situation.
Yeah, yeah.
He's born after,
Yeah.
the Mitzvah's before. You could also have people who were born a month apart, who passed away a month apart, right? And the yard site would come out on the same day. It was right the same date of Adar. Yes. But what I thought what we discussed last week was when there's a yard site in Adar, then on a year that there are two Adars, the Shulchan Aruch says you go with the second Adar, the Ramah says you go with the first Adar. And the Ramah, even though he says you go with the first Adar for the yard site, you go with the second Adar for the Bar Mitzvah. There's another point over here. Person's born in Adar, and there's one Adar. Now there are two Adars. We discussed that he was born, there were two Adars, and now there's one of the Bar Mitzvah. Let's reverse that. You're born, there's one Adar. Someone who was born in the year 2001. And let's say, I don't know, but let's say there was one Adar then. Now, 2014, there are two Adars. He will celebrate his Bar Mitzvah in the second Adar. Okay? And we explained last week the difference is that when it comes to a yard site, it's when that day arrives, I treat that day with a special reverence. So that date has arrived in the first Adar already. So I treat it then. Whereas Bar Mitzvah, there it's a matter, like we saw here by the days, I've finished out my 13 years.
Yeah.
So if I was born on the 14th of Adar, it's hard to say I finished out my 13 years when there's still another Adar coming. There's another 14 Adar coming in a month. So I haven't finished out, right? Just like over here, right? You're looking at the day, but Bar Mitzvah, you need to have finished out the previous day. So when there are two Adars, I haven't finished out my previous day of the 14th of Adar until I get past any and all 14 Adars that I'll have this year. That's why the Bar Mitzvah, we end up waiting until the second one.
So I have a question. Going back to the situation where the Bar Mitzvah boy, the boy is born on the 1st of Kislev when there's only 29, and then 13 years later, his Bar Mitzvah is on the 30th
Right.
of Cheshvan.
Which will happen to the Baba Rebbe.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
But what's the implication? Is just that he has to now start performing all of his mitzvot beyond after
Okay, so
13?
you're raising a good point. From his perspective, he's now obligated in mitzvot min Torah.
Right.
Right? Would we count him for a minion that gets a little bit, he's responsible, right? Can we fully rely on him, right? Is it viewed as a definite, or is it viewed as a suffix? If it's viewed as a definite, right? Let's say it's a suffix. So he, from his perspective, he might be obligated. He's got to put on his tefillin. He's got to do everything kadas v'kedin that day. But if it's a suffix, from our perspective, he's got to do it, but he might not be there quite yet.
Right.
Right?
It's only one day. I mean, what's the likelihood of that
Correct.
situation happening?
Right. A place like Irvine, we never have a problem with a minion. It could never come up. But there are some places like Los Angeles where they don't always get a minion so easily. So there, it might be more of a relevant question.
Like when you were talking about getting the janitor,
Yeah.
like a year ago.
Linda.
When we were talking about yurt side. Excuse my ignorance, I don't know everything about Judaism.
You're
We're
excused.
supposed to fast on our mothers and fathers' yurt sides?
So there are those who have a custom to fast on parents' yard sides. Some have a custom to make a kiddush on parents' yard sides. There are different ways that it is. There are different ways that people.
Is it a 24-hour fast?
No, it would be a sunrise to sunset fast for those who do that. Chayefka and the Janet.
Hi, isn't there some ruling that a boy who's almost bar mitzvah can participate in a minyan?
He can and should participate, but we won't count him. We won't count
I've
him.
been to a few places where they counted the kid. He's almost.
I don't know. Were these places counting you also?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've heard something similar where they give if it's a child, it's like even if he's 5 years old, 10 years old, they'll give the
The Shulchan
child
Aruch,
a
that's actually where we're up to right now. We learn Shulchan Aruch every morning after davening. That's what we're up to right now. The halacha we're up to, but we're not knowing to do that. Right? It's brought down. Some do. The Shulchan Aruch said there are those that. Right? Even he is not so. But we don't do that. We don't give it to the Sefer Torah. Right?
Who's we?
The
Orthodoxy or
the prevalent custom. The prevalent custom.
Prevalent
Yeah.
custom to.
Is not to count a child holding a chumash or holding a sefer Torah.
Isn't that funny? I've been to a few of them. Not here. When I've traveled up north, we'll say.
Could be.
Are they Orthodox or
Orthodox.
Was it?
are they Orthodox or
Yes,
conservative?
Chabad.
Oh.
It was a
Chabad, maybe Chabad has a different custom.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Could be.
I've been also in Chabad, but it's also in a remote posting where it's sometimes unlikely to
Hard
get
to
him
get
in.
in.
Desperate.
So desperate it's like,
When you go out on
we'll
the
find
street,
any
you
way we
grab
can
any
pull
man.
out the Torah.
Janet.
I remember the rabbi's son was slightly underage and they included him.
It could be that there's something called Shulchan Aruch Harav, which is a different version of the Shulchan Aruch that Chabad follows. So it could be right? according to our Mechaber and Ramah, it is something that is discouraged. Perhaps in Shulchan Aruch Harav, they accept that. Yes, Jan, and then we'll give people a chance to bench.
That person has definitely completed the requisite number of days to have been one day past the day that would be 13.
The day prior to his birthday.
Yeah, years, so that we can legitimately say bar mitzvah. As you're saying, then why are other people still viewing that individual as a suffix? You know how you said.
What I'm saying is it's not clear from his perspective, right? What we're saying is he treats that as his bar mitzvah, right?
Right.
That's regarding his obligations.
Right.
Right? There are those that say not, so therefore it might only be considered a suffix.
Just for this case of the 29, 30.
For that one day, correct.
But anybody else who it was clear that, like if it was Nissan.
Yeah.
to 30.
This is only right. Yes.
So then that other individual wouldn't be labeled a suffix, and they would.
100%. Right? If the person was born on the Nisan always has 30 days. If the person was born on the 30th day of Nisan, so when we close out the 29th day of Nisan, 13 years later, that's his bar mitzvah. Nothing to talk about. Only question over here is that he's closing it out, 2 days before his actual birthday. That's the issue at hand.
So then, for that purposes of that, on the 3rd of Kislev, say, he would be considered no longer Suffolk?
On the first of Kislev, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Steve.
Your side question, is there not some provision, if a person does not get buried for a certain number of days after the actual death, then the first year, the your side is the anniversary of the burial?
Yeah, if it's more than 2 days, if it's more than 2 days apart, I believe that's how we do it.
So a tidbit of information. February of 16th this year is a gala dinner. And 16 this year is a gala dinner. I don't know how often that ever happens.
Yeah. We're running we're going to run parallel quite a bit this year.
Yeah, I didn't realize that till I was looking
No,
at
it's been since November, so that
Right, yeah.
the secular
And
and the
the thing have
religious
been
have
the
been
same.
almost alike in our life.
it.
Yeah.
I just saw that today.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
noticed it
it's
before.
close.
Yeah.
It's close.
Figure out.
That's a good question.
Yes.
What if you have like family members that are estranged and it's months later, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later, you find out that they passed away?
Yeah, so there's something called a shmua krova and a shmua rechoka. You find out about 30 days later, then the person just acts as an avel for a short period of time, just that day, and then that's it.
They don't have to say Kaddish?
A person could say kasha. In terms of the obligation of mourning, right? So then the person that is very much limited. In terms of kaddish,
It's always nice to do.
yeah, a kaddish, a Jewish person dies, a kaddish should be said. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosh.
Yashar koach, everybody. Good to have you here,
Thank you,
Marty.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
Okay, Dov, you wanna hit that button?